May I ask a question along that line? So is it totally in the superintendent's discretion whether to put it on the agenda?
The superintendent, as his role as the chairman of the board, sets the agenda.
Okay, is there law that says that? Where is the statute that says the board has no authority to set anything on an agenda or request it, or if the board voted to say we want this on the agenda next time subject to open meeting, where is that that says we can't do that?
Again, we're getting very far afield of what we're here to talk about as it relates to the agenda. I'd be happy to talk to both of you in the appropriate time and the appropriate manner about those things. And I think that there are ways to go about what you're doing, but doing it today, in my view, is not the correct thing. We need to stick with the agenda, and we can take those matters up at the appropriate time through the appropriate channels.
Okay, well.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Board of Counsel, so that the record of this meeting is clear. I think that we're dealing with multiple issues here. One has to do with President Trump's executive order and the effect or the possible effect, if any, on federal programs that run through the schools. The other is whether or not there can be a special agenda called to, in essence, rescind a prior board action. As you know and as others know, the rules proceeding through are basically on a statutory calendar. So I just want to make clear that with regard to some or all of these issues, the department, and as chairman of the department, we're going to reserve a right to respond to any of these issues, whether in writing or orally or both.
Understood.
I do believe we have a second. Do we have a second on the floor for an administrative order?
There can be no action taken.
There's no action to be taken. There's not an action item to be taken on that.
Okay, thank you.
So just for the record though, the superintendent brought up a topic. I asked a question and the topic was brought up per the agenda. And so I just want to understand that this is not an item that we brought up, it's an item the superintendent brought up.
Well, I think it's good to separate. Superintendent Walters was providing you information not to be voted on of things that are going on in the Department of Education with respect to President Trump's recent executive order. He's providing information to you regarding that, not expecting a vote one way or the other. And you have used that to say, I want to talk about a matter that was considered at last month's agenda. And my only statement as legal counsel is there is nothing on the agenda with respect to the rules that were passed last month. We certainly can talk about how and if those can get on the agenda, but it can't be on the agenda today because it's not been properly noticed under the Open Records Act.
Okay, I understand. For the record, I'd like to request a special meeting for discussion, but I understand your position.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. To be clear, I will always stand with President Trump and enforce his executive orders, especially when it comes to illegal immigration and the cost to our schools. Next topic is our social studies standards. Today we will have a vote on our new social studies standards. This is an important step to ensuring our kids have a well-rounded education and understand American exceptionalism, understand civics, and understand our Constitution and those constitutional principles. These new standards will ensure that kids have an accurate and comprehensive view of historical events while also reinforcing the values that make our country great. This vote is about equipping our kids with knowledge and critical thinking skills that will serve them through the rest of their lives. I encourage full support for these new rigorous standards, and I remain fully committed that our children learn the full and true context of our nation's founding and the principles that made America great and will continue to make us an exceptional country. The last item I have to give you guys an update on is we're going to have some teacher certification issues that we bring to your attention today. We will have another critical vote that involves rescinding some teacher certificates. Oklahoma will continue to lead the way in holding teachers to the highest professional and ethical standards. Any educator who cannot meet these standards, particularly when it comes to providing a safe and appropriate environment will not be allowed to remain in the classroom. Our children deserve teachers who act with integrity, professionalism, and a commitment to student well-being. The vast majority of our teachers absolutely do this. But when we see the stories that come from parents and students, when kids have been inappropriately treated in the classroom, we will act. And I commend this board for their continued commitment to student safety and making sure that parents know when their kids attend an Oklahoma classroom, their kids will be safe and their kids will learn. That's all I have for the update this morning. So that concludes item 3 on the agenda. Next we have on item 4, it is a discussion and possible action on the minutes of the January 28th regular Board of Education meeting. So I'll entertain any discussion or possible action on item 4.
Superintendent Walters, I'd like to make a motion that we table that until the new board members have had a chance to review last month's meeting.
Yes, sir. Mr. Dethridge, thank you for that, and board counsel. So we've got 3 new board members did not attend the last board meeting. If we were to table, does table automatically bring it up next board meeting?
Not necessarily. It'd have to be included on the agenda.
Okay. But could the new board members review the minutes and be able to vote in a future board meeting potentially to approve
Yes.
those minutes? Okay.
Yes.
So if we tabled it, we could come back to it, look at the minutes and everything else. Okay, just wanted to make sure that's clear.
Just a question of clarification. The minutes are of an event that I was not at, and I will never be able to determine if they properly reflect that event. So I don't know, even reviewing those minutes, I could ever vote for that. So, not that I have no knowledge, so.
I would suggest that between the transcript and the official recording, that it would be possible to determine, even for a new member, whether or not there's an accurate representation of in the minutes.
So there is a recording of the meeting?
Yes.
Is it necessary for me to do that as a board member that was just sworn in today?
That's for your decision to make as a board member.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
So what I can do, board member, is make sure that all the new board members, and we'll send it to the entire board, but let's make sure we send them a video link so everyone has the ability, if they so choose, to go back and review the video.
Sure.
And the transcript with the minutes. So we'll put all that together in a very.
They have the minutes and the transcript.
Okay,
And to
perfect.
be clear, we're only confirming that the minutes reflect what took place at the board.
Correct.
Yes.
That is correct.
So that the record's clear, that the minutes reflect in summary form what happened. They're not gonna be complete.
Correct, yes.
Sure.
So we have a motion to table. Do we have a second?
I would like to clarify your statement, sir. We do have audio and video of that, so we could review those documents with audio, non-summary form as well. Is that correct?
I want to clarify the statement for you, sir. Minutes are generally intended only to be an accurate summary of what occurred.
Okay.
Typically, these meetings last hours, so the minutes wouldn't be as nearly as lengthy.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
And just one thing to add, we do have the long form transcript that's written of the recording. So I've reviewed that alongside with the minutes, so you could have access to that as well if you wanted to read it instead of watch it.
So we still have a motion on. Do you
Yes,
want
sir,
to?
please.
Yep. So we have a motion on to table. Do we have a second to that motion?
I will second the motion.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion before we go to a vote? Okay. Ms. Amy, do you mind calling the roll for us?
Mr. Van Den Hen,
Yes.
Ms. LePack,
Yes.
Mr. Tenney,
Yes.
Mr. Dethridge,
Yes.
Mr. Archer,
Yes.
Superintendent Walters.
Yes. Motion passes. We will table the minutes to the following board meeting. Next, we have a consent docket, and board members, to be clear, if there's ever an item that you want to remove off of the consent docket to take up individually, always happy to do that. Just to be clear, board counsel and general counsel, did anyone ask for any of the items on the consent agenda to be pulled off, to be voted on individually?
No one asked the State Department or the Legal Services Division of the State Department
Same for, as general counsel for the board. And I wasn't aware of any, but if there's a motion now or a discussion around pulling one of them off in particular, we're absolutely, I'm happy to hear that. Let me flip here in my binder to give you kind of a brief on what we're looking at here. So what you're looking at is a list of teachers that are asking for, or districts that are asking for a waiver here. And you have a list of what their degree is, you have a list of the requesting district, and the area that they're requested to have a waiver to continue in the classroom. So, and I do want to point out, it's the last line, and I'm sorry guys, I am in this, it's underneath 4 there in your binder, but it says on the front, you've got this synopsis of the Teacher Preparation Act. And the last line of that says, only after all of the descriptions there have been exhausted shall the district be allowed to employ an individual meeting minimum standards as established by the State Board of Education for the issuance of emergency certificates. So just to be clear, what the districts do is they go through this list of criteria. Once they've gone through that list and they document that they did so to our agency, they then request to go on to the agenda for the board to ultimately approve the issuance of an emergency certificate. We vet those applications to make sure all of those things are done. To be frank, we rarely have an issue with districts on this front. Districts are usually very aggressive in trying to find teachers, whether it be, first of all, they have to publicly post the position, but attending job fairs, some take out advertisements, some do social media advertisements as well. So usually it has been very rare. As a matter of fact, I don't remember a time in my 2 years that we saw a district that we didn't feel made the effort to find folks for the position. So, and just to be clear, you are granting this waiver here for them to continue in this role. These are individuals that have to be voted on by their local board to be approved. So there's still that, you're not the only vetting source here. The board ultimately has to approve their hiring and seek that out. So I just want to be clear about this list here in front of you. And again, if there's any questions or if there's any individuals that you want to pull off, we did put some statistics there towards the back so you can kind of get the proper context there around. I'm happy to go into details on that if you want to as well. It's something we keep track of. If you kind of flip, you can even look at the different districts. I don't think it would, I don't know that it would jump out at you, but I mean, our larger districts, of course, you're going to see the much larger numbers there.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, these have been submitted to the Department of Ed, and you guys have made sure that they've done what they're supposed to do before they submit these names to you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
So we check that, then we put them on this agenda. And again, if we don't get the information to us, we kick it back to the district and say, you've got to provide this for us here.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And Superintendent Walters, this little packet is the extent of the consent decree. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Are the waiver requests on the late penalties part of the consent docket, or is that separate? Are we taking that up separately on the second page?
On the second page,
Yeah.
are we doing that separate? I thought we were doing A and B separate, but yes, yes. So we're looking at A as item 1 on the consent docket, and we would look at item B. And I'm happy to go ahead and go through item B.
I would go ahead and move to approve item 5A for the teacher certification regulations for emergency certificates.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion before we do a roll call? Okay. Ms. Amy, my phone roll for us.
Mr. Vandehen,
Yes.
Ms. LePac,
Yes.
Mr. Tenney,
Yes.
Mr. Dethridge,
Yes.
Superintendent Walters,
Yes.
Mr. Archer.
Yes.
Okay, so that is 5A is approved. Now let's take a look at 5B. I'll give you a quick overview, and then we can go as deep as you guys want into it. But we have the Oklahoma Cost Accounting System. You'll hear us use the term OCAS quite often, of submissions that districts have to provide on how they're spending their funds. We do have dates at which those have to be submitted. There's kind of twofold for that. Number one, so we can evaluate, so we can accurately get money out and check those funds, number one. Number two, there are some of them that have federal requirements on the back end of that. So what we have here in front of you are the list of districts that did not meet September 1 submission deadline. And we always want to give you context for this because the board has always viewed it differently of, are you a day late, or are you 2 months late, or are you regularly late? So we try to provide that context here for you. So if you look there, we've got a list of the September 1 was the deadline. So the locked in date is when they were able to submit their funds. There is the payment that they were given, and there is the penalty that they would face, or if you look towards the end, the total penalty there. So what we've done is we've made recommendations, and I'm gonna double check this here. We have made a recommendation on, since all of these were recovered within a month of the due date, we've put on here for a waiver of these penalties. And again, the penalty would be the district would pay a penalty to the State Department of Education. In the past, that's been, again, this board is obviously welcome to deviate, but from the past, within a month is when we felt is a fairly reasonable, we don't want to set the expectation that the deadline doesn't mean anything. That's always kind of the balance you'll have to kind of struggle with individually. But what we've tried to say is if they act within a month, that shows the district was trying to do so. And again, I can go through some specific examples, but sometimes districts thought they submitted or didn't, somebody's sick, some people are wearing multiple hats. You'll notice a lot of these districts are very small. We also take that into account of, frankly, when you talk to them, it is the superintendent also wears about 4 or 5 hats, so they're trying to do this, but something came up.
Those are usually the type of feedback we get. So these are usually very small districts where someone's trying to
questions.
Absolutely.
I'm not clear. I understand that these guys were late on paying. Have they paid now, or have they just submitted letters telling you why they were late? I know that's in our binder, but have they paid and you're just waiving the penalty? Is that what we're voting on, or are we just?
No. Yes, sir. We have their information, so they've uploaded their information. The
Okay.
payments have moved. The question is, do we want to
So they've
pull...
given you the information. Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
So the question is, do we now want to financially take some of the funds back because they were late? And you can look at the numbers. I will tell you, in the past, we've had board members say, we think this example was a lot worse than another one. The only one, look, the Cherokee Immersion School, it was, October 1st. But again, most of these, you notice, are within the first few days. So it tends to be my belief of if it's within a month, if they cooperated with the agency, if they were communicating with us, we tend to not have them pay these. But again, that is at the board's discretion whether we do so or not.
So Superintendent Walters, your recommendation is to waive these fees?
Yes, sir. That's my recommendation.
I'll make a motion, we waive the fees.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Okay. Do you mind calling roll for us, Miss Amy?
Mr. Vandehen,
Yes.
Ms. LePack,
Yes.
Mr. Tenney,
Yes.
Mr. Dethridge,
Yes.
Mr. Archer,
Yes.
Superintendent Walters.
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you, board members. Next, we have some presentations. So we're going to shift into item 6. So this is the accreditation standards. So I'm going to call up Ms. Sharon Morgan and Ms. Brenda Chapman to go over. You have 2 packets in front of you. These 2 ladies and a lot of others have been working on this for nearly a calendar year now at this point. So happy to have them walk through the process. And
presentation. You ask questions at any time. You don't have to wait till the end. You know, however you'd like. They do have a formal presentation ready. But if something comes up, you know, just ask the question. We'll go ahead and answer it for you.
Good morning, Superintendent and board members. Thank you so much for your time today. I am Sharon Morgan, Program Director for the Office of Standards and Learning, here to review for your consideration the revised drafts of the Oklahoma Academic Standards for Science and the Oklahoma Academic Standards for Social Studies.
Right, we're about to.
Great. Okay, got it. I have trouble with that every single time. Along with me, I have Brenda Bamer-Chapman, the Project Manager for Social Studies and Personal Financial Literacy. And we also have Heather Johnston with us. Heather was our Project Manager for Science and Engineering. She transitioned to the role of Vice President of Programs at the Science Museum during this time, but she has lent her expertise to the standard writing process. So she's here for any questions as well. So we are going to review the process for standards and then give an overview of the changes in the science standards, and then Brenda's going to come up and give an overview of changes in the social studies standards. So here is the legislation that tells us to revise the standards every 6 years in conjunction with the textbook adoption cycle. Those standards are brought to this board for their approval. I do want to clarify that standards are what students should know and be able to do at the end of each grade level, as opposed to curriculum, which is how we teach those standards, and that is a locally based decision. There are a number of groups that work through this process with us. So we have an executive committee which supports the OSE in guiding and finalizing the revision process. We have a writing committee which reviews and revises standards and responds to feedback from the review committee. We have a review committee that looks at those early drafts and reads them and gives us feedback. We make more adjustments as needed. We also have focus groups. They review and provide feedback based on their specific area of expertise. So we have the perspective of a variety of groups. And then once we integrate all of that, we go into public comment. So public comment is open for 30 days. Anyone is able to provide feedback, and we look through all of this. Here's kind of an overview of the timeline. So we have an application process to determine the writers and review committees. We start their work. The writers look at the goals for the revision. They look at the current draft that we have, and they start making revisions. The review teams also look at the first drafts and make suggestions. These are generally educators, so a lot of that work is done in the summertime. And then focus groups also look at the standards and provide feedback. The executive team, the OSCE, will look at all of that and integrate it and make an initial draft. That draft goes out for public comment. We have forms that anyone can fill out. We look through each one of those comments and make a determination about how those can be incorporated in. At the end of that time, the OSCE creates the final document, makes adjustments, reads it over, formats, all of those things, and then we bring it for your approval. And then it will go to the legislature. So the composition of the committees and focus groups, those include school districts, higher education, community, educational organizations, tribal members. Okay, so I'm going to go over, just highlight some of the changes in the Oklahoma Academic Standards for Science. So we added headings to the disciplinary core ideas. So if you kind of look at the bottom, we have these three different dimensions. In the blue, science and engineering practices, we think of that as the doing of science, what you do. In the middle, we have the disciplinary core ideas. In the orange, that's what we need to know in science. And then in green, cross-cutting concepts, that's the thinking that we're doing.
Can I take a time out real quick, just for the board's sake? When you're looking at this, the primary users of this document, of course, parents look at this, the public look at this, but I do want to be very clear, this is when a teacher is teaching these subjects to know that they are meeting the state standards. They will go, now of course most teachers are going to have this online. There are some that obviously print it out and look at it, but this is what they will be looking at to drill down into, do I cover the standard? They would look at that standard, then these sections underneath for the specificity around, is my lesson today meeting these standards? If you walked across Oklahoma schools today, a lot of schools do this, you would see at the top of a teacher's board, PS43, so if an administrator walked by, they would know, today I'm teaching this standard. So I just kind of wanted to give a bit of a 10,000-foot overview there of, it is going to be a teacher that's going to be looking at this and trying to understand, am I meeting the specificity here in the standard? So I just kind of wanted to make sure the audience here is to ensure that our teachers know what the standard is and how are they meeting the standard. Sorry, Ms. Morgan, just wanted to.
That's fine, thank you so much. So for this change in the disciplinary core ideas, we added some headings that just created more consistency and clarity for teachers. We did make some updates in the science and engineering practices and the cross-cutting concepts. You see that here just to ensure that there was grade level appropriateness and vertical alignment between the grade levels. We also added this new section, you'll see at the bottom here, science literacy. Science literacy provides additional support for engaging students in understanding and applying basic scientific concepts, processes, and reasoning to everyday situations. There's also 2 additional pages in the front pages to help clarify this concept because it is new. We also added 2 sections at the end. We have the addition of aeronautics standards for high school and grade banded engineering standards. So these aeronautics standards are for an elective course, course code 5010, which is an aviation-based course that includes instruction in physical, earth, and space sciences. And the grade.
I want to pause on that. You guys are going to hear a lot about schools that launch aviation academies, aeronautics academies. What this does is this makes it very easy for schools that want to implement a course like that. It is now an elective course in the state of Oklahoma. They would have the standards. We've been working with those districts to build that out. Also some of the other commissions as well in aeronautics. So this would make it very easy for District B to say, all right, well, we want to do the same thing. Well, here's the standards, the curriculum's available. This really makes it easy for them to stand this up as being one of the top industries in the state of Oklahoma.
And the grade banded engineering standards just provide an extra resource for what engineering looks like at those different levels. Also, if you have some kind of a STEM class that's outside of the regular classroom, it would give them some extra resources on what to teach to make sure they're supporting the classroom instruction. And I did mention public comments, so I wanted to provide an example of how we integrated public comment into this revision. When we had our initial drafts that went out for public comment, those science literacy pieces were within science and engineering practices, and cross-cutting concepts. Public comment overwhelmingly said that was confusing. It would be difficult to assess. It would be hard, so that was moved into its own little section underneath the standard to help that request. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna let Brenda come on up and talk this.
As they're transitioning here, I also want to say one other thing. Me and board member LePack have talked a lot about this, but this is what you're voting on, but when the standards are approved, what we also do is create what we call frameworks. I don't know if you guys are going to talk about this, but that gives specifics and curriculum that's not required, but just to say, if you're trying to teach this item, here are examples of curriculum for you to use. So there is a lot more that we will put in for when a teacher clicks on these if they want examples of curriculum that meets these standards. But that's not a vote, it's not a requirement, that's just an additional piece of material that we do provide the teachers. So.
And I'll just jump in real quick, sorry. The reason we've talked about that a lot is because I hear from teachers who say 2 different things consistently when we're considering standards, because we've done it in other subjects before. One group that's kind of saying, I need more guidance, right? I'm looking and this is general and how do I meet the standards? And so they want more options to what your point is. Yep. I have another group of teachers that say, I want to be creative in my classroom. And so I don't want, to be dictated to this really specific, laundry list of things. And so I just want to take the standards, teach, to those concepts, but I want freedom to do what I want to do. So that's, I think, trying to strike that balance.
And I'll reiterate what Superintendent Walters and what Sharon said. So for social studies, it's the same thing. The standards are what students should be able to know when they leave that course. The curriculum's going to be whatever they use to teach those standards. So the textbooks they do, the resources they get, and then the frameworks that we have also give them other options for using that. And so The standards are kind of what they teach, and then the other things help them with guidance, if that helps.
Superintendent Walters, and presenters, when you talk about folks that have vetted this information, just because I'm not familiar with it, so bear with me, who helped put this together, and how is that? You talked about public comment and things like that a minute ago. Is that those? Talk to me that process. Who helped put this together? Who helped come up with this curriculum or guidance, I should say? Talk to me about that, if you would, please.
So we had an application process where teachers, curriculum coordinators at the different districts that we have, community members, tribal members. I know we have museum members because we have a very rich museum community in Oklahoma, and so for science and social studies, we have people here at museums. We have, I know for me, we have historians who applied for that. Then the review committee is those same people. So if they weren't on the writing team, they were still giving their expertise on the review team. And then public comment was anyone who wished to give it. And so it could be anyone from Oklahoma or anywhere that gave us public comment.
Yeah, and I would say, and then the executive, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, the executive team is usually kind of determined, but with the leadership at OSDE.
So could you kind of just walk them through, so, you know, when we had the teachers meet, just walk them through, what did that look like? So what the teachers do, can you kind of walk through kind of the work product of how they got there? Because it is a very long, arduous process, and we've got some, you know, core members from different districts around the states that help with this. So can you kind of walk through, what did a day look like when we were over there at UCO? Was it, we walk them through kind of, what did that look like when they developed these standards?
So we met with them first in the summer, and we talked about goals. We talked about goals they had, and I'm going to mention the Fordham Institute's information that they gave us to give to the teachers to work with. And they thought about goals and a focus they wanted to do. And once we narrowed down those focuses, they started reviewing each of the courses. So we had an elementary committee. We actually had an early childhood committee, an upper elementary committee, a middle school committee, and then high school courses by the subject because they're a little bit different. And I know science was very similar in that way. And so they were working on a grade level or subject that they had the most expertise in, if that makes sense. And the majority of the members on our writing team who were doing that were teachers from different districts. And for social studies, we had a tribal member on every committee because we feel that's very important to have that consultation on every committee. And then the same people, after the writing team came up with the draft, those same teachers and community members and tribal members were part of the review committee that gave them instant feedback. So we had numerous school districts, numerous committee members, numerous museum people, and lots of different tribes. I think we had 15 tribes maybe that were important. So we had lots of different tribes, and that allowed them to get instant feedback, and then they incorporated their feedback, and then our executive team helped with an overall scope of pre-K through 12. Because when I'm doing my subject, I'm looking at my subject, and they helped us with that overall subject. I don't know if you have anything else for science.
No,
Very
I mean, I
similar.
think it was very similar. We usually do a similar process for each time, each content area.
And I want to add in one thing too. One of the things that we did is you drilled down the different area of expertise, but also the different grade level, because it's very important. Again, is what we're introducing in third grade academically and intellectually appropriate for a third grader? And so having a group of third grade teachers that ultimately, yes, you have people like you know, the historians, everybody else who talk about content, but it was much larger a group of teachers that said, okay, that's great content, we're content experts as well, this should go in third grade, this should go in fourth grade. And so I do think that the team did a really great job of making sure it's not only academically what they need to know, but where do we put that? And that's a big part of this is, well, what goes in third grade, what goes in fourth grade, what's the most appropriate?
May I make a comment? And I also have a question. As a former social studies teacher, I went through the social studies things, and I was surprised by the detail. There's a lot in there, and as I went through it, I think it's a really balanced view of history and social studies. I know there are people that have their pet peeves of things they want in and want out, but I first want to just express my at least personal appreciation, because there had to be tons of work to put in, and to whoever did it, I don't know who they are, but I express my appreciation for that. I did have a question though on the pre-K. This may be my lack of ignorance, you know, for kindergartners, because I taught high school. But like, students will engage in critical active reading of primary and secondary sources related to social studies, comprehend, evaluate, synthesize textual sources to acquire and refine knowledge. Students will develop a variety of evidence-based written products designed for multiple purposes. And I'm looking, this is pre-Kers that, to my knowledge, I got a grandkid about, they're learning their ABCs and their numbers. So how does that fit in? I know you can say, well, the teachers can reduce it down, but how does it help them reduce it down?
So for pre-K, we'd be using visuals because they won't be reading, and use the same reading skills you use with the picture that you would with the text. So they're practicing what can they glean out of this picture, and they may have a picture of a house on fire, and one of their standards is community members, and then they're asked, who would you need in this situation, if that makes sense.
Yes, I guess, because I saw this, we've ran it by some pre-K and kindergarten teachers, and I think the idea is, well, yeah, I'll fix it, but if it's to be helpful to them and clarify the standards, shouldn't it be already reduced down to their level in these standards? That's, I guess, my question.
That's the overall standard that goes through from pre-K through 12. The overall standard stays the same, and the individual objectives are for that grade level. And in public comment, we've taken the overall practices out of pre-K as a public comment. So they're now going to start in kindergarten, if that helps.
Thank you.
That was one of the public comments, and so we've taken those big four practice and taken them out of pre-K because I think science and other subjects followed that suit, and we've put them started in kindergarten. If that helps your question.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I do have a question, but are you going to go through a presentation?
Just a few slides to
Okay.
kind of show you what the committee focused on, but you're welcome to answer it now if you want.
Well, I have one process question, and then one is a science that we've been through. But
Oh, if you want to ask your science question.
the process question is, you mentioned public comment. So that allows the public to comment. Is the public comment visible to the public? Who reviews that public comment and takes action items from that?
So we internally view that, the leadership views that, I viewed that, Sharon reviewed that, and we can't do everything because I can't add 800 people into the standards, but we did read through every one of them and take it into account, and some of those comments will be in the frameworks, as the superintendent was talking about, because it's more of a curriculum issue. So some of the comments we got were more of a curriculum issue, which would go in the framework. I don't know if you want to.
No, I think.
So the more specific question on the science curriculum, I know for years there's been a debate of 4 and 4 math and science. Is that where that's addressed, or where in the curriculum?
Yeah, I can answer that. Sorry. I'm Heather Johnson. I'm the Vice President of Programs and Education at Science Museum, so I've been the one helping. I'm going to come around, sorry.
Heather served as our content expert. We didn't have a science person during some of this, so she served as our content expert.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, hi. I can talk on that. So the graduation requirements for 4x4 would be separate from our science standards. Our standards are for what is currently required, and then also some of our electives.
So where is that discussion taking place?
That's determined by the legislators.
Okay.
And then we follow those statutes. And then I can't remember the office that implements graduation. Student development does that. And then we just help provide what would they teach. So like high school biology is required, so we have biology standards, but aeronautics is not. But we have been getting a lot of questions on what's a science-based aeronautics course look like, and so that's what the new standards for that would help attempt to support.
Okay, and thank you. Final question, maybe comment. So I just am coming off the Russo board, and so the Regional University System of Oklahoma, and it became obvious, painfully obvious to us, that only 8 to 10% of our high school graduates are STEM ready, science being one of those areas. is that lack addressed in this curriculum, or is that again somewhere else?
So I'm always for more sciences, of course, because that's my favorite. But the state of Oklahoma only requires 3 sciences to graduate right now, which is high school biology, one of the physical sciences, so that would be chemistry, physics, or physical science, and then anything that they want for their 3rd science, which means they can take whatever the district chooses as their 3rd science. And it could be something we have support for. It might not be. It could be a career tech course, which is also really great. Then they don't have to take anything their senior year. So, you know, that gap year between high school and college could help hinder their success in high school, in college in sciences, but they're not required to, so we can't make them.
So, is that again a legislative issue?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I will say, to your point, it's something the legislature's discussed a lot the last few years, and kind of how do you get folks ready for a job, workforce? Do you give more flexibility if they want to bounce into a career tech and things like that? So that has been a discussion, and again, you know, we're happy to weigh in on it, but what we do is we design the standards in accordance to what is required, and then also the reason we developed that course was as districts have flexibility for that 3rd science, well, we think aeronautics and aviation would be a great one. So the more that we develop around that, it's obviously encouraging for districts to say we can meet that standard or that requirement by checking the box here. And again, that was something that, again, Heather came up with of, hey, this is something that's hot, let's create this so that more districts would choose this. So that's kind of our way of saying, look, obviously this is what we're hearing from workforce, it's not required, but if we develop it and develop the curriculum around it, share it all together, obviously you're gonna have a lot more schools that utilize it.
Right, thank you for that.
Yeah, and I just want to build on what we try to do with our elective courses for that junior year is align with the other courses that are required, so that we know that it's really building off that knowledge kids are gaining, and it's not coming from something that they don't know about. So teachers can really continue to build on the understanding they did as freshmen and sophomores.
As I mentioned before, the Fordham Institute is really the only organization that really reviews social studies standards, and they don't do that but about every few years. And so the last report we got gave us some really great information. One of the things that they told us about is they really liked our scope and sequence. They thought it made sense, and they thought the format was very easy for teachers to use. And so one of the things that the writing team focused on after reading that information was to try to keep the scope and sequence together. It seemed to make sense, and to keep the format together. The other thing the Fordham Institute really suggested to us was, you know, we're having a lot of teachers retire. We have a lot of first-year teachers. And even though you might know what the standard means, they might not know the why behind it. So the specificity we talked about and the elaboration was something the writing team really took to heart, because they were looking for ways to show the why behind the things that were in the standards. We've always had 2 sets of standards for social studies. We've had practice standards, which are those skills that you think about, and then we've had content standards. The practice standards were in a chart in the back of the standards last year, and so the writing team and the review team and administration, everyone thinking together thought, you know, we should put those together. So we've broken it out and putting the practice standards in with the content standards, so you can see the skills and the content together. The other thing that our committees really wanted to focus on was, last time we did this, we really looked at tribal sovereignty and tried to put those in every grade level. And so this year we looked at places we could strengthen that particular standard, and I think you'll see that that was done very well. And the other thing that the Fordham Institute asked us to do was, they really liked the fact that we don't have a separate civics class. We thought it was very important to have it in every grade level. So instead of just doing a 1-semester civics class, every subject has civics included into it, integrated into it. And so they thought, just call that out and make it more obvious that you're doing that in every grade level. So here are a couple of examples the way the committee did that I wanted to highlight for you. And this is a 2nd grade standard, where before they were learning we have 3 branches of government. So now they're also going to talk about, we also have other kinds of government. We have local government, we have state government, and we have a tribal government. So we don't just have a national government, we have all these other governments. And they help people, they enforce laws, and they resolve conflicts. So it's just kind of that basic idea that yes, we have a national government, but we also have other levels of government. And then later on, as they get up into grade levels, they're going to specifically talk about all of those different levels of government. In sixth grade is geography, and so geography is very important because it covers all things in our culture and government and economics. And so in the past, it just talked about the role of the citizen. So this time they added principles of limited government and individual rights and liberties, so that there are more things to consider when you're comparing governments in the Western Hemisphere for sixth grade. And then one more example I wanted to show you that kind of shows civics and tribal sovereignty is in Oklahoma history, where now they're going to talk about how the tribal governments are set up, and some of them look a lot like the governments that you're studying, and they do the same thing. They take care of their people and manage finances and things like that. So I wanted just to give you a few things that the committee tried to up the civics in each of these grade levels.
And I do reflect the board, one of the things we saw is, again, these were topics introduced before, but because they were introduced so late, we wanted to address that to make sure that kids, you didn't start talking about tribal government in 9th and 10th grade. It's already introduced early in the grade so that kids have that understanding of the tribes were here, the tribes had a system of government. That's built into the context. Same way with some of those core constitutional principles as well. Instead of introducing them in 5th and 6th grade, you start at a very basic level introducing them before, where again, you're able to increase the rigor, you're able to increase the academic standard by introducing some of those topics much earlier, and again, very conscientious of the grade, right? Making sure that it's grade level appropriate. But because of that, we think it helps bring a lot more clarity to kids on the tribal governments that are in place, sovereignty, what that looks like, and then also the American form of government, how it was created, how it kind of functioned here, and what their role is as a citizen. And again, on the civics point, I do want to point out, remember our students are now required, was it last year, the first year, the civics test?
For seniors, yes.
For seniors, students are required to pass the civics test, which I think is great. I applaud that. But we wanted to even take a look now and say, now that that's a requirement, bulking that out even more throughout the standards, of course, gives them a lot of prep. And again, we don't want to come in, and I applaud Brenda was way ahead of the curve on this. We're not, hey, senior year we'll teach you civics. No. Civics needs to be embedded throughout your entire K-12 experience. And so that way, first of all, our students are prepared for it, but also that is a part of the conversation in every grade level. So I'm very proud of their work on that as well.
And then just like Sharon was talking about on public comments, one of the things that was brought to our attention is that when we were talking about what primary and secondary sources are, artwork wasn't listed. And artwork is a very integral into looking at what people were thinking about at the time. And so maybe a first-year teacher might not consider that. So we went ahead and added it in there where a veteran teacher might remember to do that. It's in there maybe for a first-year teacher. So very specific things that were brought up in public comment that were really good ideas.
Do you have any questions for Sharon and Brenda on the process or content or implementation? And again, I will say I am like Board Member Tenney as a history teacher. For me, it's like you want to include it all, but what we tried to do was be very conscientious of, we wanted more specificity so teachers knew what we were requiring of them to teach. But we also didn't want to bog down too much where, hey, I can't get to this in a school year. So a lot of that and a lot of what we see in public comments actually goes into the frameworks to say, yeah, you're more than happy to teach about these individuals as well. Here's content on that. But if we included, if a few of us history teachers got together and we included every single thing that we thought was important in the standards, they get pretty bulky pretty quick. So that was kind of the way that we addressed that there is, conscientious of how much content's going into the standards, and then put the rest in the framework. So absolutely, we hear you out. We want you to have the curriculum to teach what you're talking about because it is important. But again, decisions do have to be made on, at some point you have to say, this is what we're going to teach here, and we're going to not require everything in every grade level. So.
One final question on this. So this is social studies and science. Are there other programs in a cycle, and what is that cycle?
Thank you for the question. I should have mentioned that at the beginning. So this is a cycle that is ongoing. So every year we have to do 2 more. Next year is fiscal. What was?
Or health and physical education.
Health and PE, so we've already started that a little bit, but so every year we have 2 that will come before you. And so we start that process, we focus on this once this is through. I mean, come April, May, we'll already start sending out applications for teachers. Can you come help us with this? And so this basically just continues every year for us.
Thank you.
So, I mean, just to be clear, so is it like a 6-year cycle, isn't it? Okay. So yeah, we did this 6 years ago for social studies and science.
It was 2019 for social studies and 2020 for science.
Okay, thank you.
Some of us, again, we just, got these and they're pretty voluminous. Is there, what's the time frame on them?
No, thank you for the question. So, the timeline is I would really like for these to be passed today, and I'm going to tell you why. Because these now go to the legislature. They will go to the education committees that have already sat in. We had the legislature sit in on some of these meetings so that they didn't get thrown on them last minute either, where they could be in here and have those conversations. So they have been briefed on these as they went through the process. And next what happens is once this board approves it, it will go to the education committees in the House and the Senate. They'll review. If they pass them, they go on to the floors, and then they review. And so the legislature is free to add, take away, reject, approve. So, once it leaves your desk today, if you approve it, we all shift to, we start going over there and working through that part of it as well.
So our approval only allows you to take it to the legislature?
These have to be approved by the legislature. That's in statute. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Superintendent Walters.
Yes, sir.
Understanding time is of the essence. Is it possible with some give and take here, and I would put this in a motion, that I would like to table this, but understanding the sensitivity of it, possibly do a special meeting, so sometime in between there, so that we could possibly get more educated on this, so that we'd have a better understanding of that. Because I understand time is of the essence, so I didn't see the need of maybe pushing it the full month, but if there could be a little bit of time for us to have maybe more time with them to actually go through this, and I would put that in a motion. If it need to be simpler, I can.
What I would push for is I would really like these to be voted on and approved today, and I'll tell you why. Because we've been working on these for over a year. They've been available to the public for months. The legislature will start a review process. We are getting close to a deadline that if we delay very long, we could be hindering that. So my recommendation is that we approve these today. The process has been followed. There's been a lot of feedback here. And we can move these on to the legislature and take any of their input and move these on forward. So that would be my recommendation for the board today.
Are we able, if board members just have questions about specific provisions, to just hash this out in the meeting today? Ask questions?
We absolutely could. And again, these are conversations that could continue with the legislature. This is not a final. It is required to go through that process. My concern is just, again, working on this deadline now for nearly a calendar year. If we don't get these approved today, we are going to be pushing the legislature in a faster way than what we had intended to.
And it is a requirement, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it is a requirement that we submit some standards on these subjects to the legislature this session, right? Because we're on this 6-year cycle, so it's not a question. We have to submit this session,
and we have to submit before a window in which they could adjourn. So that's the other issue of, if they don't have them in a proper timeline before they can adjourn, that's where an issue could come in as well.
Right, so it's not a matter of do we submit any standards or not? We will submit standards, it's just what will be in them.
Superintendent, I do appreciate, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I do appreciate that. Please understand that that's pretty thick. And I know there's been numerous hours, and I want to say thank you for that. You and your team and Superintendent Walters, thank you, and possibly even other board members that were involved in that. I'm just asking for some kind of concession so that I can possibly process this in my way, have a better understanding.
And I appreciate that comment. That was sort of the comment I came into this with, the thought process. given my understanding of the process, I would be okay passing it on to the legislature, but the Department of Education agreeing to be responsive to questions we may have in the coming days as we review it. Because as I understand it, if we run into an issue, we could go to the committees, the education committees, and share those concerns. So I believe we're just asking, or the request is just to push this to the legislature for them to review. And I think I'm okay with that piece.
I think, Ryan, I am thinking about seconding this so we can bring it to a vote, but I personally, I knew this was coming. Somebody tipped me off, a couple of weeks ago, so I've been digging into this stuff, and other than the one issue I had that it seems hard to, maybe I wish it would have been more specific for the little guys of how to take it down to their level. I think they're pretty well done. I like them, so if you want to bring it to a vote, I will allow it.
My question was never the quality of work that's gone into it. It was for me to understand. It was more of an understanding process. Let me be clear on that. I was not challenging what is in here. It was challenging the time frame that it takes to get from this binder into my head. That's what I was challenging and asking for concessions on.
And I would probably do the same thing if I hadn't found them. I would be in your shoes.
Can I ask a
brief
oh, yeah.
I really think what you're looking at was in the public comment draft. I think that has been removed and is not in the draft you're looking at today.
I think that's correct.
So I wanna clarify that, just so we keep
Okay, well, what, I think it's,
In your book.
well, then I haven't seen it, I don't know.
While you're looking for that, can I ask the attorneys, is there something that would, so I think there's a motion pending, if I'm keeping track right,
Yes.
for a
Yes.
special meeting. Is this something that would qualify for a special meeting?
I don't believe so. I mean, we're here to talk about it today.
Okay.
It can be adjourned and tabled for another regular meeting.
Yeah, so can you just give us a little bit of information, because I think we've run into this before and we have new people here. What qualifies something to be held as a special meeting? Because
Well,
they're not
certainly
just interim
emergency
meetings.
type of matters
Okay.
and things of that nature.
Okay.
I do apologize. I was trying to be a give on that,
Yeah.
rather than pushing it a whole month by doing that. So I will go ahead and make the motion so that we'll force a vote, that we table this till next month so that I can understand it better.
I do want to comment, if we table it to next month, we are required to turn these in 30 days before potential adjournment of the legislature. So that is a requirement. I don't have it off the top of my head. Michael, you were telling me, what's the timeline of if we...
In my consultation
Yeah.
with the legislative liaison, Lindsay McSparn, this morning, I believe that would give the agency precisely or approximately 1 day.
So if it wasn't approved in that meeting, we would have 1 day to get that to the legislature, which would ultimately, and this is where, again, I hate to put everyone in that situation where the legislature has a very tight timeline, and also you do as well. We are required to turn that in. That's where we set this as a deadline a year ago to say if we have it done today, that gives everybody plenty of time to be able to get it to the legislature. There's no kind of issue in that regard. So that's going to be my concern with delaying to the next board meeting, is then we are really butted up against a timeline of a statutory requirement.
Just a practical question, I have no idea the answer, but is it possible, and would it help, I don't know if it would, to move this, not take action on this agenda item now, go through the rest of the agenda items today and give a little bit of time today for people to review this or do what they need to do, and then take this up at the end of today's meeting? Would that help, or is that?
It's tough because it's a public meeting and it needs to be open to the public while it's considered. So you'd have to leave the meeting open the entirety of the day and everybody be here. So I don't know. That certainly could be done, but I don't know if that's practical.
Okay, just an idea.
But theoretically, we could move the item to the end of the agenda.
Correct.
You're saying?
Yes.
If I might, counsel, don't mean to disagree with you, certainly respect your ability. I believe that the chairman could adjourn the meeting for a period of time to give them an opportunity and then recall the meeting or re-adjourn the meeting at a specific place, which would be this room, obviously, at a specific time, which would be whatever time they would deem to be sufficient for them to review. And
I think that's correct. I did hear an adjournment.
I think you're still in compliance with the Open Meetings Act if you do that.
Yeah, if there's an adjournment as to that, yes.
And just semantically, I think it should be a recess, not to I think that would.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
fine.
I just want to make sure I understand what you guys are, I want to make sure I understand. So theoretically, we could take a recess if we wanted to maybe have some board members sit down with some of the folks at the end of the meeting today and kind of maybe go through a more detailed.
As long as there's not a quorum.
Oh, okay, right, but they could do that privately in a recess without a quorum, and then we could come back and, okay.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure I
Just
understand.
so that the record's clear, obviously, so that there's no votes taken, but I haven't seen a quorum that wanted some additional time.
Well, I think, yeah, if we can recess for some period of time and ask some additional questions, and I'm not asking for that recess right now, but get through the remainder of the agenda, recess, have some conversations, and then
Would it be proper to make that motion now or to make it at the end of the agenda?
I think the motion right now should be to table this issue until the end of the
That's
agenda.
correct.
If I may, I don't know that tabling it, I mean, doing a recess and giving me the information with the expectation of 2 hours. No disrespect to anybody, it's more to me, and I don't want to put the board through that. So Superintendent Walters, if you want to call for a second, if there's a second, then it'll die of lack of a second and we move on. I believe. Says that there's not a second on this.
Sure, but I just want to, okay, so, but you're saying kill it and continue the conversation, kill the motion?
I'm saying if there is, me personally, if somebody else wants to bring another motion before the floor, my motion will stand that we table it. So if there's not a second, then it dies.
Okay.
So just to be clear, you've not withdrawn your motion, you're re-urging it.
That is correct, sir.
All right.
Any further discussion on that? Do we have a second to the motion?
I will second the motion to have a vote.
Okay. We will vote, now remind me, what was the initial motion?
The original motion edited along the way through the process was that we table this to the next meeting so that I could comprehend this a little bit better and give other new members possibly time to read.
Sure. Okay, got it. Okay, Ms. Amy, can you call roll, please?
This is just a vote to table, not to pass, right?
To pass until the next meeting is the
Okay,
current.
it's not to
yes.
pass the standards, it's the table.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Van Denhen,
I will vote no.
Ms. LePat,
I also will vote no with the hope that we can get questions answered today.
Mr. Tenney,
I'll vote no with,
Mr. Deatherage,
Yes.
Mr. Archer,
No.
Superintendent Walters.
No. So motion does not pass. Is there anything that we need to do now to put this, move it forward on the agenda for, I mean, how do we do that to make sure that it comes back up later in the meeting? Or do we just,
There would be an additional motion at this point.
Okay.
so there needs to be an additional motion to what?
To approve or to table.
To approve or table,
Yeah.
okay.
good.
So that the record's clear, I'm sorry, an additional motion to approve or to table.
Not to table, but.
Okay,
yeah,
I just wanted to
yeah.
clarify the comment. because there's already.
Again,
been votes.
semantics, it should be, if we're talking about
Which
moving
is
it to the.
exactly why I'm trying to clarify for
Yeah,
everyone.
I think if we're talking about moving it to the next month, that would be the word continue, to continue it, so a motion to continue it to the next month, I think that's what we technically just voted on. The other additional options, since it's still pending, are to motion to approve. Or you could also move to table it to the end of this agenda.
So if we vote to table it to the end of the agenda, then that gives us the ability to take it up later.
Correct. You
Okay.
will then make a later vote as to when you want to recess.
Okay.
I appreciate the board members' consideration on that. For me personally, just so you all know what I'm thinking, that would not help me out in understanding and having time. So just to be respectful of the board's time, I wanted to just voice that. That was really gonna take me probably more than a day to do that, or a few hours. Thank you. Thank you, board.
All right, with that, then I'm gonna move to approve, agenda item 6A, which is the proposed Oklahoma academic standards for science and social studies.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second, do we have any further discussion before we call roll?
I would just have, I understand Ryan's dilemma, because I was thinking about that myself, but is there a way in the future, and I don't know how, you may not be around on this board when the next thing rolls around, but is there a way to get this ahead of time, more, where the board has more time to do it, or is that just on us to go online and try to find them when we know it's being done? 'Cause
Well, I will say you guys were appointed here pretty recently, so, the governor decided to put you guys on this board on a very short timeline. This has been something that's been going on for nearly 10 months here, and so, we try to get the materials in front of you as quick as possible, with also the understanding that this has been, look, I don't want to give a percentage, but most of this has remained fairly intact from when we submitted it. But remember, we have been taking public comments, meeting from public partners who have asked for changes, so there's always slight deviations to that. But yes, your point is taken. That is something that when we do these standards, it is a very open. I don't know how many hundreds of people have been involved in the process, so we wanted to be very open, of course, especially to board members, but just to the general public, so that everyone has a buy-in of, and again, very transparent process, very, very much a understood of who all is involved in it. So I do agree with your sentiments, so we want to make sure that this is very transparent and very out there for everyone to weigh in on.
just one of this may be a silly question, but I specialize in those, I think. The public comments, are they, and somebody may have brought that up, are they available? Because when I found out these were coming up, I went online and found them, but I couldn't find the public comments. So are they available, or are they just to the people that are preparing the standards?
I mean, we have generally kept those internal unless
Okay.
there's been a specific request.
That's why I couldn't find them. Part of it was just because I'm not very good on finding things sometimes.
Well, and people who put their name on them,
Okay,
so-
thank you.
so we are
That's
trying to
fine.
be dis-
Answers my question.
yeah, discretion.
But am I correct that if, on some matter that may come up later, I think we've done this in the past, that if, when the board is considering the materials, if we wanted a summary of the comments, the response to the comments, the changes made in like a red line form, we've been able to get that
Sure.
from the department. So, for those of us who have been, yes, there is material that comes fast and furious with a lot to look at for board members. I wouldn't really put these in that category because we have been working on this for so long. But I think for you guys, this is a matter of timing on changeover on the board more than it is a reflection of inability to access information in general for board members. So I think going forward, you'll know more, you'll be here longer, and then you'll know more what to request ahead of time.
And frankly, we had some board members embedded in that process even as it went forward. So, and again, to board member Lepak's point, look, there are times where things come up very short order. We always try to get those to you as fast as we can. I don't think this was one of them, but that is something that we don't want to put you in that position where you don't have access to materials.
And I think As by way of example, with regard to the rules, I think, board member Levack, you've asked me, you've contacted me, asked for some information. Of course, legal services is always willing to help. I know that Ms. Morgan and her team are always willing to help. And to your point, Superintendent, with regard to the relatively short nature of this, correct me if I'm wrong, Board Counsel, but I don't think there's even been Senate confirmation yet, has there?
No, there is not.
Always willing to help, sir, always, no matter what you need.
So we have a motion and we have a second, but we can any further discussion before a vote. We do have a motion and a second on the board.
Can I clarify what you said, sir, about the Senate confirmation? I didn't understand that comment.
My question to Board Counsel is whether or not the new members have been confirmed by the Senate yet, simply because the superintendent had indicated it was a relatively short timeline.
Right.
Before you assume your seats.
Yeah, and that is correct. We have not been confirmed, but my understanding is there's an AG opinion that says we're immediately on the board and have all rights and privileges of being on the board because of our interim nomination status.
Is that a question to me, sir?
No, that's a statement.
Okay, thank you.
I would ask that question to our legal counsel.
Yeah, so my understanding, you've received order of confirmation, order of appointment from the governor. It's been submitted to the Secretary of State as required by law. I believe all three of you had indicated that it was to fill a vacancy immediately, subject to confirmation. I believe that you have all received the oath of office, and you've submitted them to the Secretary of State. And then earlier this morning, you were administered the oath by Superintendent Walters, and you're here on an interim and acting basis unless or until the Senate confirms you. If the Senate does not confirm you, then you would not be board members. But as we sit here this morning, based upon all of that I just laid out before the board, you are acting or interim members. I don't think council's statement was in any way to indicate that you weren't board members. I think it was to indicate the very recent nature of your interim appointment.
Okay, and that is my understanding.
Could I hear that from SDE's counsel? Was that your intent?
Sir, I'm not, Brandon.
I'm sorry?
I was emphasizing the short timeline. I'm not weighing in on the legal argument. That's for your Board Counsel.
Okay.
So we do have a motion and a second on the board. Is there any further discussion before we call roll? Okay, Ms. Amy, can you call roll for us?
Certainly. Mr. Vanderhen?
Yes.
Ms. LePack?
Yes.
Mr. Tenney?
Yes.
Mr. Deatherage?
No.
Mr. Archer?
Yes.
Superintendent Walters?
Yes. Motion passes. Now moving on to item number 7. So we've got a presentation from General Counsel Michael Beeson on complaints filed. Do you have any updates there for us on that?
There are no new reports filed.
Okay, well, that was easy. Let's move on to item number 8. So we have discussion and possible action to convene into executive session for the purpose of discussing possible action on the following issues. These are, there's a list here, but it involves revocations, suspensions, and voluntary surrender orders of the individuals listed there.
I would move to convene executive session on the listed agenda items in 8B, C, D, and D. So,
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Ms. Amy, can you call roll for us?
Mr. Vanderhen?
Yes.
Ms. LePack?
yes.
Mr. Tenney?
Yes.
Mr. Deatherage?
Yes.
Mr. Archer?
Yes.
Superintendent Walters?
Yes. Okay, we will go into executive session. Okay. Gotcha. Make sure you bring your binders.
Just take long enough for me my water.
You're gonna want your water. In fact, I may take both of my water.
That's what I'm thinking. They'll like talk about stuff.
Is there a generally said that you don't have to do this much discussion?
Yeah, like in this part usually just.
Leave and go get food. Yeah, so I'm gonna leave and go get food. I'm not sitting there watching there for hours. I can watch online.
Okay. Do you want me to leave on this?
Yeah, you stay. Because I don't know when they're coming back.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Okay, whatever.
Are you having fun?
Okay, so there's Sonic, you go across the way. Nothing's coming up. What's up?
We're all set, but we're heading out.
Thank you so much. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Rock and rolling still in Tulsa.
Yeah, I'm still.
Are you enjoying OKC? Good, good.
Yeah, it's a good time.
You're statewide now, right?
Whatever.
I see you all the time on Monitor. Yeah, that's awesome. It's good seeing you. There might be a gaggle after. That's what they want us to ask about the audit being released. TPS audit. But if they don't do the audit, we're
I just saw they have 4 both side and then a 5 left side package.
It's not going to be a package.
But how the hell do you want to use the bill?
It's not going to be a package. It'd be a look like both side if anything. Don't worry. If you want to take a seat, they're going to be in the executive session. You can take mine. I'm going to go stretch.
I tried to get the Infinity or the inside school stuff. They had all that.
Oh, I mean, no, I just never got. Either way, we're gonna get on one-on-one. Hopefully, I have a internet.
On the
I'm trying. I'm trying.
As for all the public comment, we never got any.
From my group.
I know there was some of this.
Yeah, what the plug in? This, the audio, I got rid of the I can still, I can hear, you know, the mics and stuff all right, but just in the background, the red face, it's still got radio. Change this up.
Didn't once mention
I would like to say he's so ocean. That one got caught across the road. No, I mean, it's happened before. I just never, it's been a long time.
Since you've been picking up signals for a while.
When you got two fake hands, it's eye track.
Metal plate in my head. He's got a union coil or something. If you don't, that's probably why you're getting it.
Yeah, Christianity was for
I don't know who's
That's a good question too, because I know, because I don't, I remember.
I got
No, okay, no. They are post-public because I asked them that.
Anyone out here executive session? Well, I gotta go outside and do a 11:30 live shot, and then we're done after that.
Hey, Murray. Hey, Murray. Yeah, you are? Yeah. That's valid. That is valid.
Where's the superintendent? Now it's the topic. It may not be it. And you know what, they used to put it more specific spots of what topics. Yes, but then we talked about rewriting, and then I stopped doing that. So, I thought that was valid. There's different rules around special meetings. You can do special meetings. It's just outside of the monthly regular well,
Who knows how much?
Anyway, so in this process, I had to get a new car. And so for over a week, part of it was connecting together.
I'm gonna charge it for like 30 minutes and I'll be done. That is meeting the local media.
So then the car's like, okay, what am I gonna do? I need to redo this. My new number organizations. But I don't have a United app or tied into the United app, so I gotta do that. I have a modest house. You got a nice
Oh, really?
Steeler chair.
You got room to lean back over there now. I don't know what's going on.
Some of them are gone.
Wow.
That's
Tough crowd.
Hi, hello.
I think it's supposed to be very nice.
supposed to be nice.
Somebody say 75.
70s today.
I was in South Texas. Started
Yes.
just Sunday.
60s already? Well, it's, I don't know what time it is.
I was supposed to be 60. Yeah.
It's that time of year when the wind is usually blowing. It's time to be done. Yeah, you guys have. It's always dry.
You actually said it perfect.
Oh, good.
Is there a space in between or not?
Officially, yes, but in the age of computers, that doesn't work.
I have a hyphenated last name, sorry.
Business accounts, like we were rotating. They're just, he didn't retire, but he's kind of, you know.
You mentioned the name Minor earlier, and I thought you mentioned it Ryan Minor.
Yeah, well, I think.
Yeah, I did.
What does he do now? Okay.
He passed away. His brother's still alive, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I know another Ryan Minor, so I was asking that, and I was like, maybe they know each other. But this isn't still alive.
They graduated back in the 90s.
Yeah, that's
Okay, well, that would have been close.
Within a year. Yeah. Well, within the last year, maybe about a year ago.
You know what? Yeah.
He got drafted, played for the Orioles. Played, but then the Orioles just loved him. He's just, you know, a great family, but he became a coach for their minor Delmar Shorebirds. And, you know, coaching the year, you know, all kinds of stuff, but he ended up auditor back. One of those deals, horrible. His twin brother, David, professional baseball. He now is the
All those stuff on.
Okay. Do we need to take a vote, come back into session?
Yeah, I'll make a motion
Okay.
to reconvene.
I'll second it. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Amy, do you mind call roll?
Mr. Van Vanheden?
Yes.
Ms. Pack?
Yes.
Mr. Tenney?
Yes.
Mr. Deatherage?
Yes.
Mr. Archer?
Yes.
Superintendent Walters?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Any motions coming out of executive session?
I'll make a motion on item 8B to summarily suspend the teaching certificates and certificate numbers of Dylan Nagode, Tara Wright, Clifton Harris, and Yolanda Dunbar, pending an individual revocation hearing to be conducted by a hearing officer.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Amy, do you mind calling roll for us, sir?
Sure. Mr. Van Vanheden?
Yes.
Ms. Pack?
Yes.
Mr. Tenney?
Yes.
Mr. Deatherage?
Yes.
Mr. Archer? Superintendent Walters?
Yes. Motion passes. Any other motions?
I'll make a motion on agenda item 8C to accept the voluntary surrender of the teacher certificates and certificate numbers of Tracy Shaw, Adrian Waller, America Palmer, and Sheila Raines.
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? And Ms. Amy, can you call roll for us?
Sure. Mr. Van Vanheden?
Yes.
Ms. Pack?
Yes.
Mr. Tenney?
Yes.
Mr. Deatherage?
Yes.
Mr. Archer?
Yes.
Superintendent Walters?
Yes. Any other motions coming out of executive session?
Yes, I will make a motion on item 8D to grant the department's motion to withdraw the application for emergency order to summarily suspend the teaching certificate of Courtney Peck.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Okay. Ms. Amy, can you call roll for us?
Mr. Van Vanheden?
Yes.
Ms. Pack?
Yes.
Mr. Tenney?
Yes.
Mr. Deatherage?
Yes.
Mr. Archer?
Yes.
Superintendent Walters?
Yes. Motion passes. Are there any other motions on the items that we covered in executive session?
Yes, I'll make a motion on agenda item 8E to accept the hearing officer's proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law on the teacher certificate and certificate number of Stephen Gaynor and to revoke that certificate.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. Ms. Amy, can you call roll for us?
Sure, and I've just been asked if you'll speak into your microphone because we're not being picked up. Okay, Mr. Van Vanheden?
Yes.
Ms. Pack?
Yes.
Mr. Tenney?
Yes.
Mr. Deatherage?
Yes.
Mr. Archer?
Yes.
Superintendent Walters?
Yes. Motion passes. Any other motions coming out of executive session? Okay, thank you. We have no new business. So looking at public comment, I've got a list here in front of me. I will remind you first. Yes, sir.
Superintendent Walters, I do have a question under new business. Because it was of the sensitivity of timely manner, news article that came out in the Daily Oklahoma this morning, I believe with Mr. Archer requesting a ability to put things on the agenda. I would like to move that we come up with a process for the board to be able to create items on the agenda.
I would second that. I'd like to clarify that.
I'd like to ask the attorneys about, is this a motion?
This is a motion.
Discussion? Can we take motions and actions and
Yeah,
new
first,
business?
I didn't hear you. What was your request?
My request is, in light of the Daily Oklahoma News article that came out, the declining of the item to be added to the agenda, I'm requesting that we come up with a process for new items to be put on the agenda by the board members. It comes within a new 12-hour or 24-hour period under new business, in the Open Meetings Act.
The course of dealing of how this matters are handled on agenda are set by rule and by statute, I believe, and that's certainly something that's not unknown or reasonably unknown that would constitute new matters to bring up as part of this meeting.
It was new as of, I was not aware of it until I read it in the paper this morning.
Respectfully, that's an objective standard, not a subjective standard in my view. A reasonable person view how this board has operated, how this board, what the law is. Everybody's presumed to know that. I think that it would be inappropriate to bring it under new business. That's just my recommendation as the lawyer.
General Counsel, my understanding is that you are working for the board. Could you recommend a way for that to happen?
I can't make a recommendation. I can tell you what I believe to be the law as it stands on the Open Records Meeting Act.
Okay.
And that's what I'm advising you on, to make sure we don't run afoul of the Open Records Meeting Act.
Correct. Yeah, I don't want to do that either. That's why I'm asking it under...
And the Open Record Meeting, and a violation of the Open Record Meeting Acts render acts taken void. And so I don't want to have an empty exercise here today in the event something were to go forward and then challenge subsequently. And so I want to be real careful that what we do fits within the Open Records Meeting Act. And the Open Records Meeting Act is very specific with the language that it provides, and that's 25 OS 311A10 says new business means any matter not known about or which could not have reasonably foreseeably be seen prior to the time of the meeting. And how
I didn't know prior to this morning, and I think that probably would qualify as new, timely manner.
Well, I don't read the local home, so I don't know what's in there. And so, what's this email? Do you know any specifics? This came in recently.
I don't want to get into the specifics of that, but I would like to. I mean, I just read what I know, so I don't know whether it's factual or not. So I apologize for that. But
Counsel, I understand what you're saying on the Open Meeting Act, but is there a mechanism, and what is the law? Because I, tried to read up on what does the board do, and I read the responsibilities and duties of the board, and they're quite vast and kind of scary, actually. But I was wondering, how can we as a board, if there's only one person on the board, which you're the chairman, sets the agenda, how does the board get something on the agenda that we want to talk about? And if you didn't put it on the agenda, is there a mechanism to do that? Are we allowed by statute or rule or something, or is there a rule that says we can't?
you certainly could make proposals with respect to what you would like to see on the agenda. And it's hard to talk in hypotheticals because it really depends on what you're wanting to talk about, on where it would fit in the nature of these things. So it's hard to give you advice as it relates to that. And the board is comprised of currently 6 members, including Superintendent Walters, who is the chairman by statute. And as the chairman, he controls the board and sort of what's get presented, and you guys get the ability to vote, and you're independent from the chairman, and you're appointed by the governor, and we're pending confirmation. And that's why the Open Record Meeting Act is so important, that all of this is done out in the open and subject for public view. And the public has a right to know what's coming before it and not be surprised under new business or other matters. It really needs to flow through.
Yes, we'd certainly want it on the agenda in time, but like I say, the statute gives us big responsibilities, and it says the board will do that, not a person. So I'm wondering if the board thinks they need to do something. how do we get it on the agenda?
Well, I'm concerned about this entire discussion under new business. Do we have, I mean, I don't want us to, I mean, I would think the board would agree that we don't want to violate the Open Meetings Act here by engaging in a conversation that's much more appropriate outside of a board meeting of which items were listed, the public weighed in, and that our counsel has already advised that new business is a standard that we need to uphold to. And so I would say these discussions need to continue, but not in the form under new business of this agenda. And I'm happy to engage with you all in those discussions in a better manner than potentially violating the Open Meetings Act.
And I will reiterate that I'd be happy to speak with each of you and talk through these issues, but it does involve attorney-client matters and things of that nature that are best discussed in an appropriate forum. And we can do that at the appropriate time in the appropriate manner, but this is really opening up new matters to what I don't really think is contemplated.
Well, so, I mean, because I brought up an item that was rejected at the beginning of the meeting because it wasn't on the agenda, and so I want to be involved in that conversation because part of the board's responsibility is oversight of the Department of Education. If we don't have the ability to add items to the agenda that we think are important to that oversight responsibility, we cannot perform that function.
Well, we certainly can talk about that.
Okay.
General Counsel, would you be able to give us an opinion or a summary on that before the next meeting? Or how would we need to do that?
On what issue?
On proposal or, I don't know exactly, I'm asking. So we're willing to have those conversations, but can you outline that as our counsel, how to do that?
I'm not even quite sure because we're talking so hypothetical what it is you want answered, but yes, I will commit to talking to each one of you to understand your issues and giving you a view on what the law is and what it means. Yes.
So clearly the question is, what statute, what administrative rule confines the agenda oversight to only the chairman? That's the question.
Well, and I will tell you historically, there are statutes that clearly say that the superintendent has the control over the State Board of Education and the board itself. There are statutes that say that.
So I think all we're asking is to see those statutes.
Again, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to stop. We are well beyond what we need to be talking about on new business, and I'll be happy to take it up with you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, let's move on to public comment. I'll have General Counsel here kind of with his alarm here that'll go off after 1 minute. So first we've got Jennifer Doherty. So we'll remind you of the 1 minute timeline. Please be respectful of everyone else coming after you. So Jennifer Doherty, if you would step up to the podium, please. Do not run y'all's heads to the TV as you kind of walk around that way. So do we have a Jennifer? I apologize if I'm Jennifer. Yes, but can you step up to the? Thank you.
Greetings. I am Jennifer Doherty from Broken Arrow. I am speaking as a concerned parent. I'm wondering why special meetings to discuss the government changes that are affecting our schools is not a standard practice. There are so many changes happening at the moment that need discussion right now. The changes of the Department of Education and immigration requirements are critical events. Discussions are an emergency. The government is changing faster than possibly wait for the next meeting. We can't wait for Ryan Walters to deem it a topic. Schools are confused about the requirements. Parents have opinions and want answers. People around this table want to discuss these things in a public forum. Special meetings after any executive order or law passed that require drastic changes to our schools are needed now. Oklahoma lawyers and people around this table need to review and discuss actions publicly before being implemented for the best way forward.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate that. Next we have Arya Asma. Arya.
I do apologize to everybody. At some point I'll change it.
I come not to bury a godless nation, but to praise it. Shame on you, Solomon. You profess one faith and another and a third and a fourth and another too. Better to destroy the high places and the temple too than to burn incense for two masters. It was Cyrus whose temple was cleared by Jesus. Solomon's temple had long been destroyed. Cyrus established peace between Israel and Egypt in 1979. It is the key of the 9th chapter of Revelation. The Star of David descended at Alma oil field. 5 months. The thing for which the Secretary of State resigned. Destroyers in the Persian Gulf. Another 5 months. Abadan, north of the Persian Gulf. Do I have time? Do you have more time? Do you want it? Do you need the 2 minutes?
Thank you, Arya. Next up, we have Erica Wright.
Hello, honorable members of the board. Superintendent Walters, my name is Erica Wright. I'm a parent of 2 public school children here in Oklahoma, founder of the Oklahoma Rural Schools Coalition. First of all, I just want to thank the new members of the board. Thank you for answering the call of Governor Stitt to come and serve our kids and our families. I would like to comment a little bit about today on the public comments for standards, and just encourage you next time to please proactively, you guys should be proactively providing that, in my opinion, that you guys can read the public comments that people put into the system. But I'm really here to remind you, Superintendent Walters, that it is Public Schools Week. During School Choice Week, you made about 18 posts and had several press releases about private schools, but we've yet to see anything officially come out to you, from you, celebrating the 700,000 children and educators and families that are in our public schools this week. So I wanted to, in case you forgot, let you know that there's still 2 more days that you can do that. And in the event that you choose not to, I wanted to take the time to thank all of our public school people out there working hard for our kids. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Erica. Next we have Ryan Kerr.
Mr. Walters and the board, I asked to speak today because I'm extremely disappointed in how the previous board has handled key issues. Your responsibility is to provide the best education for all Oklahoma kids, free from discrimination, but Mr. Walters and the past board have failed. For nearly 2 years, the Defense of Democracy has attended these meetings only to face increasing barriers to public comment. We've gone from open speaking to a restrictive lottery system, the opposite of the meritocracy and transparency Mr. Walters claims to support. Meanwhile, Mr. Walters has been sued for bullying children, is fighting the Attorney General over which students deserve education, and has cost Oklahoma billions in lost business. Our state ranks next to last in education, yet nothing here the board has done addresses this crisis. Oklahoma students deserve better. We can do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Next up, we have Bob Lynn.
Bob Lynn.
Yes, sir.
Inside?
Yeah, wait, yeah, either way, I don't know. Yeah.
What's the courts?
Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Bob Lynn, and I just wanted to briefly thank you, Mr. Walters, for the leadership you've given to this board since you've been superintendent. And on behalf of the vast majority of Oklahomans, thank you for what you've done to relieve our school of sexual perversions that have taken place. And I know this board has worked hard to remove that very small percentage of teachers who are pedophiles. And I want to thank you for that. And I just trust this board will continue to watch over the moral foundation of this state. Both Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, who've played key roles in founding this nation were very strong on this point, that the nation could not survive without a strong moral foundation. And both men felt that Christianity was the fundamental foundation of morality. And so my hat's off to you, Mr. Walters, as are that, and most Oklahomans love what you're doing, and I appreciate it, and I hope this board can continue to function in that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Next up, we have, Elisa Powell. It's kind of smudged on my sheet. Elisa.
Oh, goodness. My name's Reverend Elisa Howell, and I keep hearing all the talk about the Bible, but what I don't hear is the talk about Jesus or God coming out of this board. Matthew 6:1, be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. Matthew 6:5, and when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray, standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received the reward in full. How about Hebrews 13:2, be sure to welcome strangers into your home. Leviticus 19:34, you shall love the alien as yourself, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt. Exodus 23:9, do not oppress a foreigner, but everything coming out of this board is oppression. Genesis 1:27, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female, he created them, and it was declared good. So why is this board to say to God that people or children are trash? I would also like you to look up the Oklahoma Appleseed Organization and Ryan Walters' gross misconduct. Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. Next we have a Judy Hyman, and I've got it's a Sergeant Major Judy.
Thank you, Superintendent Walters, for allowing me to speak. I'm a grandparent and a concerned citizen, and I would like to let you know we're standing up with you, and so glad you're standing with President Trump. Thank you for your transparency with the media, just like President Trump is doing. The public needs to hear your voice and how you're getting our schools back to how our forefathers started the schools in this nation. I have a personal knowledge of a young boy that was put in public schools after he actually was homeschooled for a while. He was put in public schools. He couldn't understand why his classmates couldn't even spell their own name. He could spell his name and read at 7th grade level, and he was only like a second grader. I also know that a personal friend of mine who's a teacher said that we are desensitized from violence because of technology, and therefore we have become more violent in schools. So that's a few of the testimonies, and thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Next up, we have a Robert.
Thank you. Thank you. So
make it green. Push it again. There you go.
Okay. I want to thank you, Superintendent Walters, for allowing me to speak. I just want you to know that we're standing for you and President Trump with prayer. Okay? And our prayers are with you. And the Bible, in my day, as I grew up, was a big part of my education. Because I knew in the background that the Bible was a fact, and it brought me and gave me reality to face this world, okay? And I just wanted you to know that you are doing a wonderful job. Our prayers are with you, and we want to thank you every day for what you're doing, sir. Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you for that, Robert. Next up, we have Ed Moore. Ed Moore.
Superintendent Walters and members of the board. Name's Ed Moore. Just an observation that I made for the meeting today. I thought it seemed like we had a general lack of preparation. And I was kind of talking to somebody on that, kind of a management expert. He says, you might think about 5 things that you've done to prepare, or think about the rhetorical, that you've done to prepare for this board meeting at the state level. The other thing that I did observe today as the meeting went on, I learned a lot. So it's kind of a mixed type of a blessing there. And that completes my statement there.
Thank you, Ed. And then next we've got Lenina Starks.
Superintendent Walters, I'd like to thank you for everything that you've done. I'd like to thank you for everything that you've done for our children. I would also like to thank the past board members who did such a service. And I also would like to quote your words. Parents know what's best for their children. In Oklahoma, we are empowering families to take charge of their kids' education. I'm proud to end the government overreach and restore parental rights. I am quoting you because you get so misquoted. And so I'm about tired of hearing that as well. But new board members, these children are ours. They're not yours. They're ours. It's easy to see as a citizen what the agenda is here. It's been very obvious what the agenda here. Ryan Walters is not battling, what he's battling for is for President Trump. We the people elected President Trump to run this country. So it's about time that Oklahoma line up with what the people voted for. Thank you for an opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Lena. That concludes public comment. We entertain a motion for adjournment here.
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second. We've got a motion and a second. Further discussion. Ms. Amy, can you call roll for us?
Mr. Vandehem?
Yes.
Ms. LePack?
Yes.
Mr. Tenney?
Yes.
Mr. Deatherage?
Yes.
Mr. Archer?
Yes.
Superintendent Walters?
Yes, meeting's adjourned.
What are we doing here?
I'll take them.
Okay, that's just the list.
Just leave them right behind.
We leave these here.
And then our mileage forms. She is offering, I think, to take that, but I believe she will let you take the mileage form.
Okay.
Hey, I just do you want all the materials?
You are posted online.
Yeah, I've sent it to you
Y'all
all.
can take a picture of the
Oh,
names
that's right.
of the people that did public comment today. They should be in order, so it's right here.
You keep my agenda. Scribble on it.
Hey, the mileage forms.
Yes,
Can we do them next time?
Yeah, I'm fine. So I'm gonna get a digital signature from you, so be looking for that.
It's fine. It's fine. We can just do it next month, Terry. We just collect a few and next month.